I am going to begin to read a new book by Walter Russell. Well, it's not new, it's an old book. It's new to a lot of people, and I wish it would be new to a lot of very scientific minded people out there who understand science a little better than me, who will read this. For I don't know how to answer your questions if you have questions about this. I'm just a person who has a gut feeling that this is true science. Some little bits of it I do understand, others I don't. But nevertheless, I'm going to read this just as if I understood it all, because sometimes when you just believe in yourself and you go after something over and over again and you keep reading, new and better ideas come to you. So I'm going to read this for people who like to have a chance to listen to something being read. And so I begin. A new concept of the universe. Special revised edition of a brief treatise on the Russell cosmology by Walter Russell. Once in a while, in long century periods, some vast new knowledge comes to the slowly unfolding race of man through cosmically inspired geniuses or men of supervision, who have an awareness of the reality which lies beyond the universe of illusion. This new knowledge is of such a revolutionary nature in its time of coming that whole systems of thought, even unto entire cosmologies, are rendered obsolete. When each cosmic messenger gives such new inspired knowledge to the world, the whole human race rises one step higher on that long ladder of unfolding, which reaches from the jungle of man's beginnings unto the high heavens of ultimate complete cosmic consciousness and awareness of unity with God. Thus it is that man has ever been transformed by the renewing of his mind, with new knowledge given to him since his early beginnings, through the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita of the early Brahmic days, through such ancient mystics as Latos, Confucius, Zoroaster, Buddha, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Epictetus, Euclid, Mohammed, Moses, Isaiah, and Jesus, whose cosmic knowledge utterly transformed the practice of human relations of their day. Then dawned a new day of the gathering of so-called empirical knowledge, which is gained through the senses by research and observation of effects of matter in motion, rather than through the consciousness of inspired mind in meditation, which is the way that mystics and geniuses acquired their knowledge. Since the days of Galileo, this undependable method of gaining knowledge through the senses has served to multiply man's reasoning powers by teaching him how to do marvelous things with electricity and the elements of matter, but not one great savant of science can tell the why or the cause of his familiar effects. If asked what electricity, light, magnetism, matter, or energy is, he frankly answers, "I do not know." If science actually does not know the why or what or cause of these essentials, it necessarily follows that it is admittedly without knowledge. It is merely informed, but information gathered through the senses is not knowledge. The senses sense only effects. Knowledge is confined to the cause of effects. The senses are limited to but a small range of perception of the effects which they sense, and even that small range is saturated with the deceptions and distortions created by the illusion of motion. It is impossible for the senses to penetrate any effect to ascertain its cause, for the cause of illusion is not within effect. For this reason, the entire mass of so-called empirical knowledge which science has gained by reasoning through the senses is invalid. Let us examine some of these conclusions, which form the basis of scientific theory, and see why all present theory is invalid, and why its entire structure has no resemblance to either nature's laws or its processes. I will now enumerate some of these unnatural theories. Basic misconceptions of science. 1. The cardinal error of science lies in shutting the Creator out of His creation. This one basic error topples the whole structure, for out of it all of the other misconceptions of light, matter, energy, electricity, magnetism, and atomic structure have grown. If science knew what light actually is, instead of the waves and corpuscles of incandescent suns which science now thinks it is, a new civilization would arise from that one fact alone. Light is not waves which travel at 186,000 miles per second, which science says it is, nor does light travel at all. The light of incandescent suns is but an effect of one of the two equally opposed electric pressure conditions which interweave this universe into visible solids and liquids surrounded by invisible gases of space. These two opposed electric conditions, which form the basis of the constitution of matter, are the compressed condition of gravity pressure and the expanded condition of radiation pressure. These two electric conditions are the equal and opposite pressures which make motion imperative, and without which motion is impossible. The positive electric condition compresses large volumes of light waves into small volumes by winding them centrifetally into spiral vortices, by thrusting inward from without. That is what gravitation is. The negative electric condition expands small volumes of light waves into large volumes by unwinding them centrifugally into voiding equators where matter disappears. That is what radiation is. Radiation thrust outwardly from within to depolarize matter and void motion. The light of suns and the dark of space are but two opposite conditions of the same thing. They interchange constantly. Each becomes the other sequentially. Science excluded God from its consideration because of the supposition that God could not be proven to exist by laboratory methods. This decision is unfortunate, for God is provable by laboratory methods. The locatable, motionless light, which man mistakenly calls magnetism, is the invisible but familiar light which God is, and with it he controls his universe, as we shall see. Misconception of electromagnetism. The Einstein theory of the constitution of matter conceives this universe to be one great ocean of electromagnetism, out of which and into which flow the streams of gravitation, matter, and energy. Radiation, the equal and opposite mate of gravitation, without which gravitation is impossible, is entirely ignored in this fantastic and unnatural concept. Equally fantastic is the claim of this theory that it is possible to have gravitation without matter, and for space to exist without gravity or without matter. Electricity is the only force which God makes use of to create this universe, and the only two tools God makes use of for creating his universe of matter and motion are two pairs of opposed spiral vortices. One of these opposite pairs meets at apices of wave amplitudes to create spheres of matter. and the other opposed pair meets at cone basis upon wave axes to void both matter and motion. These two pairs of opposed electric spiral vortices are the basic units which construct all matter. Together they form the electric waves of motion, which create the various pressure conditions which are needed to produce the many seemingly different elements of visible and invisible matter. Electricity is divided into two equal and opposite forces which thrust away from each other to build this polarized universe. When inability to thrust away from each other takes its sequential turn in the pulse of the universal heartbeat, depolarization voids all opposition. Thus this universe consists of cycles of life followed by death, growth followed by decay, and generation followed by radiation, each expressed simultaneously and repeated sequentially forever without end. That which science calls magnetism and believes to be a force which has the power of lifting tons of steel is God's still light, which balances and controls the equality of electric division. But electricity alone performs all of the work of this universe. The magnetic light, which controls the universal balance, performs no work whatsoever. A bar magnet picks up nails because of the electric current, which divided that steel into its activated, polarized conditions, and not because of its focal poles of stillness, which center its two activities. Even though the electric current has been withdrawn, the steel retains its electric activity for long periods and acts as though the current still remained. Magnetic light control might be likened to the rudder of a ship, which controls the direction of the ship's motion without in any way motivating that motion. It might again be likened to the fulcrum, which extends its power of expression through motion to a lever without in any way acting to motivate that expressed motion of the lever. God's still magnetic light is the fulcrum of this creating universe. Electricity is the two-way lever which extends from that fulcrum to give the universe its pulsing heartbeat of simulated life-death sequences. Whenever God's light appears in matter, there stillness centers motion. But there is no motion at that point. The center of gravity in a spherical sun or earth is one locatable point where God's light is. Likewise, the two still centers of north and south spiral vortices are other locatable balancing points of control. Likewise, the shaft which connects all pairs of opposed poles is an extension of stillness from the zero of wave beginnings to the zero of wave amplitudes, and the return of motion to the zero of its beginnings in the stillness of its boarding place on its wave axis. This is a universe of light at rest, from which two opposed lights of motion appear to manifest the idea, which is eternally sealed in the light at rest. Misconception of energy. Failure to recognize that this universal body of moving matter has been created by some power outside of itself has led science to conclude that the energy which created matter is within itself. That the energy which created matter is within itself. Even more erroneous is the conclusion that energy is a condition of matter, such as heat. This fallacy has led to the conclusion that creation will disappear when heat energy runs down. The first and second laws of thermodynamics are built upon this obviously wrong conclusion. The universe will never run down. It is as eternal as God is eternal. The universe of matter in motion is a mind-conceived, mind-creating body. As such, it is as much a product of mind as a pair of shoes, a poem, a symphony, or a tunnel under a mountain is a product of the mind which conceived it and motivated the action which produced it as a formed body of matter. The poem is not the poet, however, nor is the symphony its composer. In a like sense, this universe is not its own creator. Whatever qualities or attributes there are in any product, whether it be an adding machine or a universe, have been extended to that product by their creator to manifest qualities, attributes, and energies which are alone in the creator of that product. Nor is the ideal which matter manifests within matter. Ideal is never created. Ideal is a mind quality. Ideal never leaves the omnipotent light of mind. Ideal is but simulated by matter in motion. Ideal never leaves its invisible state to become visible matter. Bodies which manifest ideal are made in the image of their creator's imaginings.